my dears, I hope that you are doing well. I get messages every single day from all of you lovely people asking me how to unmask because they have been masking for so long that they don't know how to stop. And I am in no way an expert on this, but I have a good deal of experience, so I will give you guys some of my tips and tricks at the end. But first, on Saturday, June 5th, 1 week from today at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I guess, I'm premiering a new music video for Song from Bed. It's going to be incredibly wholesome, so you should please come to that. And I also have a really exciting announcement coming out on Monday, so stay tuned for that as well. But moving on, what is masking and why do we do it? So autistic masking is when an autistic person hides their autistic traits, and this can be intentional or unintentional. And we'll talk about why that is in a little bit. But masking can look like doing more socially appropriate stims, like fiddling with earrings or clicking a pen rather than flapping your arms and spinning in circles. Or it can look like suppressing stims altogether by sitting on your hands and spending all of your energy trying to keep still. It can look like being less social so as to blend in, or being over the top social, or overly explaining yourself and constantly clarifying every single point that you make in order to make sure you aren't misunderstood. It can look like making eye contact despite it being incredibly unnatural and painful. It can be forcing yourself to give hugs despite hating touch. It's bottling up all of your emotions until you're in a safe place where you can let them out, or replicating every single piece of the popular girls on TV. Did anybody else try to be Hannah Montana, or was that just me? Because if it works for them, it must for you. Basically, masking is like being a chameleon, or a copy machine. It's not just holding your tongue so as not to say a rude thing, it's completely changing every single aspect of who you are to fit in. And I might add that this generally is the base philosophy behind ABA. You can watch my video about that over here. But anyway, why do we mask? I mean, isn't it just easier to be yourself? Well, think about the alternative. Not fitting in and being the weird one, which is something that many of us like to say that we're totally cool with, and I know that I mostly am now, but remember what happened to the autistic kids, diagnosed or undiagnosed, in middle school? Endless bullying, everyone hating you for reasons you can't explain, being people's pet projects, being taken advantage of, not knowing what's going on, being alone all the time, not being invited to anything. I mean, I could go on. And yeah, fake friends aren't great, but at that age, they're better than nothing. I mean, even if you aren't completely included, at least you aren't being bullied. So it seems like a reasonable trade-off. And that's when masking begins. It begins as soon as we learn that certain things that we do aren't socially acceptable. I talked about this in my diagnosis video, which you can watch over here, but age 3 to 4 is when kids start to understand and internalize social norms such as gender, and that's when I started masking. You can literally see on old home movies from just a few months apart a completely different kid. I go from squealing and flapping and talkative to completely stim-free, and almost immediately after that I talked a lot less and I lost the ability to make eye contact because stimming was how I coped with things that made me uncomfortable in the world. And over the next few years of these videos, you can see me slowly turning more and more normal. Because I learned to fake eye contact, I started talking more in ways that seemed articulate and eloquent, but looking back, I know that they're entirely scripted. I became kind of a character. And there was never a point where I said, "Ah yes, I must hide these pieces of myself in order to be liked." What I did really wasn't intentional. It was simply I learned that certain behaviors were being rewarded and some weren't. It's basic conditioning. And it happens at a very formative time in our lives. Autistic children are taught systematically from day one that who we are is wrong and needs to be suppressed, regardless of intention. And we don't mask for fun. It's exhausting. We mask as a trauma response because maybe, just maybe, we can kind of fit in. And there's a point very early on where you switch to not even knowing that you're doing it anymore. It's just what you've always done to survive. But there's a bit of a catch-22 here. The harder we work at communication, the more people expect from us and the less willing they are to compromise. To put it another way, the more normal we seem, the more we are expected to change to become more normal. It's kind of like that thing when you learn math in first grade and you get the hang of it, and then you get to fourth grade and then your teacher says, "Nah, forget it all, we're gonna relearn it." And then you get to sixth grade and then your teacher says, "No, you have the wrong textbook for that whole time." So then they teach it to you again, and then you get to high school thinking that you finally know what math is, and then your algebra teacher says, "Nah, everything you've learned the last 9 years has been a lie and you have to start over yet again." You keep thinking that you finally have it under control, that you finally learned and you finally made all the mistakes there are to make, only to get back to square one. And the more skills that you gain, the more people expect you to be able to learn. They never accept the amount of effort that you put in as enough. So you will always be the odd one out, no matter how hard you try. And that's frustrating as hell. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It makes you feel like you can't do any right and that there's just no hope for you. And when you're continuously being yelled at for doing things like clicking a pen or tapping your foot, you feel like you must be a bad person. It feels like in order to be a good person, you have to hide these pieces of yourself. And that can obviously have some really negative consequences. Quick content warning here for abuse and medical issues. Feel free to skip to this time code if you like. So for those of you who've seen my start over story video, which I will link over here, I masked so much that it very nearly killed me. I was told, this little thing you do is annoying, or, oh, this stim makes me anxious, and I just let all those pieces disappear. I manufactured the perfect person to be liked by my friends and the person I was dating at the time, and every time I let a piece of myself slip away, that was just another coping mechanism that I lost. And every time I said to myself, this is the last time that I'll compromise, and then they kept asking for more and more. Not always explicitly, but it was clear when they thought I was being too weird or too much. And that, in combination with a nice host of medical issues, led me down a depression and anxiety spiral that I didn't know how to get out of because I had deleted every single one of my coping mechanisms. So there was nothing left for me to grasp onto. And unsurprisingly, those friends left too. The only thing that kept me alive was a pandemic and a tattoo. And I literally masked myself to a point of memory loss and permanent physical disabilities. And masking also sets us up for abusive situations. If eye contact and touch are physically painful for you, but you're being constantly forced to hug people and stare at them directly in the eyes while you're having a conversation, that level of pain and anxiety is normal for you. So you don't realize that there's actually something wrong with it. So all those red flags and gut checks that you're told to continuously be aware of are just ignored because we're used to feeling that way constantly. So we just walk into situations that are unsafe or unhealthy and don't think twice because, well, that's just a daily experience for us. Our boundaries are never respected. Not to mention that being bad at masking makes us feel like failures, which doesn't help the mental health situation. It's often said that there's no such thing as an untraumatized autistic, and it's because this is the situation that we grow up in. Regardless of intentions, the world just teaches us that who we are is wrong. And when we change ourselves to try to connect with others in the way that people want us to, we still feel like we're failing because that way of connecting with others is completely unnatural to us. Sure, from the outside it may look like we're connecting, but inside we feel isolated and uncomfortable. And that's when you see anxiety and depression skyrocket, and that's why they're so high in the autistic population. Now, this may seem like some kind of inevitable doom, a proverbial conveyor belt that you can't get off of or avoid. But I promise you that it is possible. Even if you're 18, even if you're 85, you can learn to unmask. It takes a lot of conscious effort and a good leap of faith, but it's doable. So here's what I did and what advice I would have given to a little Sydney. You're welcome to take all or none of this advice. Do as you like. It's your life, so live it as you so desire. I will also link the written version of this down below for you. Now, before we go into the entire process, I just want to cover stimming and other autistic traits really quickly. I know a lot of people who are newly diagnosed want to be more autistic, but then they're scared that, oh, maybe they're just faking it or that it'll look weird, especially with stims. So what I recommend in this situation is finding yourself a mirror and then just embodying the stereotype. I'm talking Christopher from Curious Incident or Sam from Atypical. Flap your hands, do all the stereotypically autistic things, and you'll get used to seeing yourself do them and slowly get more comfortable. Of course, you don't have to keep all of these mannerisms that you try on, but if any of them make you feel more comfortable or they make you feel happier, you can keep them. I found that after going to this super extreme for a day, which I did during my evaluation to ensure that I got diagnosed, I realized how much less tired I was and how much happier I was when I acted that way. And so I just started to add more and more of those things into how I coped with the world. Some of them stuck and some of them didn't. And I discovered that I actually had a lot of internalized ableism to deal with. It's definitely a process, but it's important to get comfortable doing these kinds of things alone by yourself and being comfortable with yourself, just in case the world isn't too kind about it. Okay, unmasking step 1. Create your character. We talked earlier about how masking is essentially becoming a character, right? And because of that, a lot of autistic people are very skilled at picking up accents and mannerisms and putting on characters. And since we're so used to being a character for, well, most of our lives, the idea of being the person buried somewhere underneath all of those characters is terrifying. Because when it comes down to it, who are you really? What is your actual personality? And it's honestly the scariest part because I had no idea, so I made a workaround. The question here isn't who are you or who were you, it's who do you want to be? What makes you feel the most alive? What's your greatest motivation in life? What kind of person have you always wanted to be? When you imagine your ideal self, who is that? What are their traits? What pieces of yourself have you been hiding? What are skills that you wish that you had? I literally sat down and took out a notebook and I made a list of all of the things that I wanted to be and do. I knew that I wanted to be more Quaker and to be more reflective in my thoughts and actions. I knew I wanted to dress vintage. I knew that my greatest motivation in life, the thing that brought me the most joy, was making the world a better place for other people so that people like me didn't have to go through the things that I did, which is why we're here. But I made a concrete list and then I turned them into actions. And I also might mention that this wasn't like I'm gonna sit down for the afternoon and just make a list project. It was a running document that I added to for weeks, and I added things, I took things away, I modified things, and then I broke it down into small actions. So for me, these actions included redoing my closet, buying some books on Quakerism to learn more about my religion, journaling every day, and starting to cook one meal a week. Small things that were doable to slowly make change. Sure, change can seem from the outside like it happens overnight. I know that photos of me from just a few months apart can look completely different, but the actual internal change is a slow and careful process. You add things, you change things, you get rid of some, and slowly you start to look more like the you that you want to be. Over time, each thing simply becomes habit. I found that some personality pieces I tried on didn't quite work the way I wanted them to, or make me feel the way that I wanted them to, and didn't feel quite natural, so I changed them a little bit to fit me, or I just threw them out altogether. And you'll find throughout this process that you actually do know a whole lot more about yourself than you thought you did. The next step is testing out this new you. I highly recommend starting it over the internet because you can always meet new people, you can go to new spaces, albeit virtual ones, and you can find other people in your community to have safe conversations with, and you can also communicate without having to worry about your body language and eye contact because, well, the other people can't see you, and when you get tired, you can just simply log off and take a break. Obviously, the last step would be to go and live life as the real you, but that makes it sound easy, and I just want to acknowledge how incredibly hecking terrifying that is. Oh my goodness. And you'll probably have what I called a friend desert. Some people will stick with you, of course, but some people won't like the new you, and they'll leave. And that's okay. And you'll feel lonely, and you'll feel like you're never gonna have friends again, but then new people will start to get attracted to the new you, to the openly you version of you, and you'll realize that you didn't really need those other people because, well, they weren't true friends anyway. And yeah, being you can be hard, and it can get a lot more closed doors, but you'll find that the doors that open are 1,000,000 times better than all of the ones that were closed. I know that I did. Sure, I can count the number of neurotypical friends I have at this point on one hand, but I have more neurodivergent friends than I can count. And they like me for every single piece of who I am, every flap, every squeal, everything. And in my opinion, that's pretty darn rad. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful to you in some way, and to anybody struggling to learn to unmask, I totally understand where you're at. I was there just over a year ago. I want to remind you that you aren't alone in this, and that while things may feel a little bit rocky right now, you will come out 10 times better on the other side. I promise. So, as always, thank you for listening, thank you for learning, and remember that your story isn't over. It's only just begun. Hang in there, my dears, and I will see you in the next one.